Imagine your feet start moving. You didn't decide to move them. They just start. That's how it began for Frau Troffea on a warm July morning in 1518 in the city of Strasbourg. She walked out into the street and began to dance. No music, no occasion, no explanation. She just danced. By the end of the first day, she was still dancing. By the end of the week, 34 people had joined her. Within a month, the number had climbed to 400. The city of Strasbourg was in crisis. People were dancing in the streets until their feet bled. Some of them danced until their hearts gave out. They couldn't stop. They didn't want to stop. And no one, not the physicians, not the clergy, not the city council, had any idea how to make it end. This is the dancing plague of 1518. And it is not a legend. It is one of the most thoroughly documented events in medieval history. City council records, medical reports, physician accounts, all of them describe the same thing. Hundreds of people, convulsing and gyrating for days without rest, in a state of apparent compulsion, in the streets of a single European city. The city council's first response was unusual, even by 1518 standards. They hired musicians. They cleared a large guild hall and a grain market to give the dancers space. Their logic was that the dancing would burn itself out faster if it was allowed to continue. It did not burn out. It spread. Physicians of the time were consulted. Their official diagnosis was hot blood. The cure prescribed was more dancing. For decades, historians proposed a simpler explanation: a toxin. Ergot is a fungus that grows on damp rye grain, and when consumed, it can cause convulsions, muscle spasms, and hallucinations. Historian Mary Kilbourne Matossian argued in the 1980s that grain contaminated with ergot could have triggered the outbreak. It was a plausible theory. But it didn't explain why the dancers appeared conscious and deliberate, why new people joined voluntarily, or why it spread from one person to the next, rather than from one contaminated food supply outward. The most enduring explanation belongs to a medical historian named John Waller, who studied the outbreak in extraordinary detail and published his findings in 2008. Waller argued that the dancing plague was not a hoax, not a performance, and not a mass delusion. It was a genuine episode of mass psychogenic illness, a condition where psychological stress, transmitted through social contact, produces real, involuntary physical symptoms in large groups of people. Mass psychogenic illness is not a medieval curiosity. It has been documented in schools, factories, and villages across the world in the 20th and 21st centuries. In 2011, in Leroy, New York, 18 teenage girls simultaneously developed uncontrollable twitching and verbal outbursts, with no shared infection, no toxin, and no neurological cause. It simply spread, person to person, like a feeling that became physical. Waller's deeper argument is more disturbing. He points out that Strasbourg in 1518 was in the grip of famine, disease, and syphilis. The people dancing were not celebrating. They were desperate. And they lived in communities that genuinely believed that a Christian saint named Saint Vitus could curse sinners with compulsive, unstoppable dancing as divine punishment. When you believe that deeply in something, when your body is already at its limit from starvation and illness and fear, the mind finds a way to express what it cannot say. It moves, involuntarily, unstoppably. Frau Troffea danced for 6 days straight. Some of the dancers reportedly died from exhaustion and cardiac failure. The outbreak faded quietly in September of 1518. No one was ever sure why it started, and no one was sure why it stopped. But here is what stays with you. The dancing plague didn't require a pathogen. It didn't require a poison. It required only a population under enough stress, sharing enough belief, and close enough together for one person's body to speak what everyone around her was already feeling. And the next time you feel an urge you can't explain, a compulsion, an anxiety, a physical sensation with no obvious source, you're not so far from a street in Strasbourg. Your feet just haven't started moving yet.